Good afternoon, everyone. Today is February 4th, 2026. This is the first meeting of the Election Law Subcommittee of Government, Labor, and Elections Committee. I'm Delegate Chris Fair, and today we are considering one bill. We are looking at House Bill 207. And so for a brief introduction on the bill, basically a pretty straightforward bill. We're looking at a checkbox, an optional checkbox on your certificate of candidacy for congressional candidates only. So that would be for our House of Representatives and our Senate candidates in the United States Congress. And they can check an optional box that says that if elected, the candidate and the candidate's spouse will not buy, sell, or exchange individual stocks during the candidate's term in office. And that if they make that indication, the state board will publish that indication on the state board's website. We have some information here. We're going to bring up the bill. Camila, if you'd help us out here, as well as the fiscal and policy note on that bill. And it appears it does not have a fiscal note. We did not receive any unfavorable testimony on the bill. We have everything in front of us that we need. Stan, did I get the bill covered properly?
Yes, absolutely. Nothing to add.
Okay, wonderful. So today I think we're going to have mostly just a conversation on this bill. We're likely not going to take a vote on this bill. We're just considering it as the first bill that we heard for the election that was in the elections 2 weeks ago. And so we're going to kind of discuss some of the bill's policy suggestions and answer any questions. And for that, I'm happy to say we have Delegate Vogel on the call as well. Should we have any questions for him, Delegate Vogel, we will call out to you directly if we want to ask you a question about the functionality of the bill. But thank you for being with us today. All right, with that, colleagues, I want to turn it over to you if you have questions or comments. Delegate Tomlinson.
Hey, yeah, just wanted to check real quick. This only applies to folks who are running for U.S. House of Representatives and U.S. Senate, correct?
That is correct. It currently only applies to them.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. Other good questions, comments?
Do you want us to jump in, or are you waiting for
concerns? Delegate Terrasa, see your hands up.
So first, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I can't hear you. I'm having internet issues, I think, or you are, or we are.
I think collectively we all are. So I think we just had a bit of an internet spike there. So okay. Apologies, Delegate Terrasa, turning it over to you. Thank you.
Now I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. I just to clarify, there's not an enforcement, but it sort of gives them an option to sign on to something, and that, I mean, I've seen that work in other places with other things in terms of, like we had some voluntary campaign finance reporting in Howard County in Columbia, and it certainly started a conversation for those who didn't sign that. So that's my understanding, is that it doesn't have an other enforcement mechanism, but either way, I like this. I think it's a good, it's a modest step, but it's a good step in my opinion.
Thank you for that. So Stan, question, if they don't check the box, does the bill prescribe what happens next? If the individual doesn't check the box, does it still show up on the state board's website as an unchecked box and says the candidate did not fill out the form?
No, so yeah, it only shows up on the state board's website if the candidate does check the box.
Okay, so it's just blank. It doesn't say anything at all if the person doesn't check the box.
That's right.
Blank area. Okay, good to know.
You got it.
And does anywhere in the bill, does it define what stocks are? Like, I don't know enough about the market to be smart enough to be able to define all of these terms, but do we have anywhere that defines exactly what they mean by stocks?
No, that's not defined in the bill.
So, Delegate Clippinger, please.
Go a step further. Would it include an option? Would it include a corporate bond? Would it include anything you could buy on a market, a future for, to borrow from trading places, frozen concentrated orange juice? What is included with stock trading? But more importantly, because it would possibly impact, many, many more people. Sometimes when you purchase, let's say the S&P 500, you buy a share of that. Is the idea that it is, I think where I'm getting at is I think it needs to be very clearly defined, but by clearly defining it, you might have to cover a relatively wide range. Where I'm going with the S&P 500 is it's little bits of 500 companies all loaded into one share, that it's not really a mutual fund, it's an ETF. So anyway, that was my input.
Thank you, Delegate Clippinger. And I guess that would be an okay spot to bring in the bill sponsor and just inquire. Can you share with us what your intent is then when you look at the word stock? Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, everyone. So I in terms of the definition, I'm open to trying to come up with language and sending something to you, Mr. Chair, to clarify. The focus here is on shares issued by an individually publicly traded company. So those, I think that's the individual stocks. ETFs or the an S&P fund wouldn't be considered an individual stock. In terms of how we want to clarify it, I just need maybe a little bit more time to look at what a fair definition would be.
That is, yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And all right, Delegate Tomlinson, over to you, and then Delegate Sample Hughes.
Yeah, because the language reads, will not buy, sell, or exchange individual stocks during the candidate's term of office. So is this, a lot of time, maybe not a lot, but sometimes we'll see elected officials on the federal side put their stocks or investments into a blind trust. Is this kind of encouraging them to do that? Or, is that something that should be spelled out? Or
I think to build on Delegate Vogel's comments about going back and taking another look at the definition here, that's something that we should also pop into that conversation. So we'll take that offline and look into that definition question.
Okay.
Is that good with you, Delegate Tomlinson? Thank you. Delegate Sample Hughes, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is for Delegate Vogel. In the language where it speaks to the candidate and the candidate's spouse not being able to buy or sell, is that already like basic practice that it affects or involves the spouse already? Is that like a standard of not to have them participate? I just am curious because I don't know, obviously, but I don't know always what my spouse does on certain things.
Yeah, thank you, Delegate. There's been a number of different proposals that look at this issue. Some involve only the representative, and some include their spouse. Some go as far as to include dependents as well. Just understanding that, information can be easily shared among spouses. I wouldn't know myself, but I think that it's a little bit more thorough this way to add spouses as well. But in terms of whether this is standard practice. I think there's been a number of proposals at the federal level to regulate this, and for obvious reasons, like those aren't going anywhere, right? There's not really a desire to self-regulate there. So um, this this would be the idea of including the spouse. I wouldn't say there's necessarily precedent on this particular issue, but I'd be curious to know, and I can look into this, whether on insider trading protections generally there is spouse involvement, and someone on this committee might know better than myself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you.
Delegate Sample Hughes, are you good?
Yeah, yes, I am, because I am just concerned about that. I mean, I understand where you're going with it, but I just was curious if that was standard practice, because it can be sometimes a little difficult, and there's no need to put extra problem where there might not be a problem. But thank you so much for researching. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Delegate Sample Hughes. Delegate Clippinger.
One more time. I guess the other question that I would have going along that sort of the same line, am I right, Delegate Vogel, in understanding your intent to be the transfer of a item, a share, a something between people, and not if the spouse had received it after a family member died? You're looking for something that transferred with, for the lawyers out there, with consideration. So I am giving this to you for something else, not what could be devised to somebody. I mean, the tricky part here is a gift or something along those lines. You're looking for something transferred for something else of value, right?
That is correct.
Okay. I'll just go back on my frozen concentrated orange juice thing for a minute then, and go back to that for a second. I think that there are questions as to whether or not you would want to extend this into people who buy bonds, corporate bonds in particular, if that's the direction that you want to go. That may make it a little broader, but having said that, I will just suspend and send it back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Clippinger. Delegate Tarasa.
Yeah, I agree with Delegate Clippinger, although I'm not sure he's suggesting which way it should go, but I actually like the idea he was discussing. And think that would be a good addition. And just to clarify with Delegate Vogel, this doesn't need to, and for what you're trying to accomplish, cover owning of the stock, right, previous. It's just you're concerned about people transferring that like during their term. Is that, and as Delegate Clippinger said, for consideration.
Correct.
Okay.
If you already have these investments made, you can hold on to them. You can put them in a blind trust. The idea is just, we don't want folks using the information they have access to, or in some ways being able to manipulate the market, that impacts the worth of these shares. So as long as you're not selling or buying during your term of office, you can continue to after you're out of office. You can do it before you're in office. It's just during that term of office.
Okay, thank you.
And the last question, Delegate Vogel, on this bill is, I noticed there was no enforcement mechanism. A candidate could potentially decide to run for office, check that box in order to create that sense of transparency, and check it in each election box thereafter, and then still go out and buy and sell individual stocks. Are you okay with that? Would you like to see it done differently? Did you intend to not leave an enforcement mechanism in there? Delegate Clippinger, did you have something on top of that? No. Okay. Thank you. Delegate Vogel.
So 2 points there. One, we have to be careful, and we are very careful in crafting this bill, because we don't want to create barriers to being on the ballot, which would get into a challenging constitutional issue, right? So we can't really create an enforcement mechanism that says, hey, if you make this commitment and then go back on this commitment, if you violate the disclosure that you've made, then you're not eligible for office again, right? That would be, I think, getting us into a tricky position with the Constitution. So that is why there isn't an enforcement measure written in here. I will say, like, voters will have the ability to hold their elected officials accountable, right? At the ballot. This is just giving voters information that I think is as important as any financial disclosure that a candidate makes when running for office, if not perhaps even more important.
Thank you. Stan, can I pop you in here for the last question? And then I think Delegate Vogel, this is a excellent topic of discussion for us to have in this committee, and I really appreciate your time. We're going to take a look at this bill together and see what other language we can work out on it. But Stan, my last question's over to you. Is if a person fills out a certificate of candidacy and fills out an attestation that all the information above is correct to their knowledge, and then they violate that checkbox, would that create a potential legal problem for them with the state board?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't actually know the answer to that off the top of my head. I think the way this bill is phrased, that I kind of doubt it, but I can look into that for you and have an answer for the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I think that concludes the work of the subcommittee. Is there any final comments that anybody wanted to make? I really appreciate everybody's time today, and thank you. And we look forward to seeing you in our full committee here at 1 o'clock.
Great.
Everyone.